Chapter 30. Twilight Towers. That night Grandpa was taken away to Twilight Towers. It was a condition of the police dropping their charges against the old man that he be sent there. Needless to say, Jack had a sleepless night. All he could think about was his grandpa. So as soon as school had finished the next day, Jack raced over to Twilight Towers on his trike. The boy pedalled as fast as he could, desperate to see his grandfather, and desperate that none of the children from the school see him on his toddler's strike. Jack was saving up for a chopper, which looked more like a motorcycle than a bicycle, but so far only had enough for one of the pedals. Twilight Towers was some distance from the centre of town. As the rows of little houses ended, so the moors began. Atop a hill sat an old building, surrounded by a high wall and with tall gates at the front. It looked more like a prison than an old people's home. Disneyland it was not. Jack trundled along the dirt track on his trike. He stopped as he reached the gates. They were made of thick metal with spikes on top. Two ornate metal T's for Twilight Towers had been welded onto them. There was a sign outside which read, "Twilight Towers, caring for your unwanted old folk." The place had only opened recently. The town's previous old folks' home, Sunshine Place, had been demolished by the unexplained runaway bulldozer accident. Twilight Towers was in fact a converted Victorian lunatic asylum. It was a tall brick building dotted with tiny windows. All the windows had bars on them. It may have been called an old folks' home, but in truth this building had such a sense of foreboding it could never be a home to anyone. The building had 4 floors and a tall bell tower stood on the roof. 2 more recently built observation towers stood at either side of the grounds. On top of both were huge searchlights, manned by big burly nurses. Whether all the security was to keep people in or out remained to be seen. Jack reached out to rattle the gates to see if they were unlocked. Zap! The boy felt a bolt of electricity flash through his body. Ah! It was as if he was turned upside down, inside out, back to front all at once. As fast as he could, he took his hands off the gate and breathed deeply. The pain had been so intense, the boy felt like he was going to be sick. "Who goes there?" came a deep voice through a megaphone. Blinking back tears of pain, Jack looked up to see a nurse calling him down from her observation tower. "Jack." "Jack who?" The loud hailer made the nurse's voice sound mechanical, like a robot. "Jack Bunting. I've come to visit my grandfather." "Visiting is on Sundays only. Come back then." "But I've cycled all the way." Jack couldn't believe he was being refused entry. All he wanted to do was see his grandpa for a short while. "Any visitors wanting to come to Twilight Towers on any other day must have permission from the matron." "I have," lied the boy. "Yes, I saw Miss Swine last night. And she told me to pop round this afternoon." "Come through the gates and report to reception." Buzz, clink. The gates opened automatically, and the boy slowly pedalled inside. The gravel path was difficult to ride on, especially on a trike made for a toddler. Eventually, Jack made it to the huge wooden door. As the boy rang the bell, he realised his hands were shaking. Click, clack, clack, click. There must have been 10 different locks on the doors. It took so long to open. Clack, click, 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 clack, click, click. Finally, a big burly nurse opened the door. She had thick, hairy legs, a gold tooth, and a tattoo of a skull on her arm. Despite this, she sported a name badge that read Nurse Daisy. "What?" said the lady in a deep voice. There was not a person on earth less suited to the name Daisy. "Oh, hello," said Jack politely. "I wonder if you can help me." "What do you want?" demanded Nurse Daisy. "I'm here to visit my grandfather, Arthur Bunton. He arrived last night." "We're closed to visitors today." I know, but I met the lovely Miss Swine of this place last night, and I just wondered if I could have a quick word with her." "Wait there," said the nurse as she slammed the heavy oak door on him. "Matron!" he heard her shout. There now followed such a long wait that the boy all but gave up hope of anyone coming back. Eventually, he heard heavy footsteps echo along the corridor, and the door swung open to a truly terrifying sight. Chapter 31, The World's Ugliest Nurses. The matron of Twilight's Towers stood in the doorway. The short lady was wearing her nurse's cap and was flanked by two incredibly bulky nurses who dwarfed her. One nurse had a black eye and love and hate tattooed on her knuckles. The other had a tattoo of a spider's web on her neck and what looked like stubble on her chin. Both scowled at the boy. They were the ugliest nurses you could ever hope to meet. Jack's eyes darted to their names badges, Nurse Rose and Nurse Blossom. Miss Swine was twirling what at first glance looked like a baton. Only on one hand, she then rhythmically tapped the palm of her other. The effect was one of quiet menace. At one end of the baton were two little metal prongs, and the other a button. What was this strange contraption? Well, well, well. We meet again. Good afternoon, young Jack, purred Miss Swine. Good afternoon, matron. It's lovely to see you again, he lied. Nice to meet you two ladies, he lied again. Now, we are very busy here looking after all the old folk at Twilight Towers. What is it you want? I want to see my grandfather, replied the boy. The two nurses chuckled to themselves at the thought. Jack had no idea what he had just said that could be so funny. I'm so sorry, but it's not possible right now, replied Miss Swine. Why? The boy asked nervously. Your grandfather is having a little snooze. My old folk here do love a good snooze. You wouldn't want to interrupt that now, would you? That would be rather selfish of you, don't you think? Well, I'm sure if Grandpa knew I was here, he would want to see me. I'm his only grandchild. Strange. He hasn't mentioned you once since he got here. Perhaps he's forgotten all about you. If this was designed to wound the boy, it succeeded. Please, Jack was pleading now. I just want to see my grandfather. I need to know he's all right. For the last time, your grandfather is snoozing. Matron was losing her patience. He's just had his pills. His pills? What do you mean, his pills? Jack wasn't aware that his grandfather needed any pills. In fact, the old man had always refused to take medicine of any kind, seeing as fit as a fiddle. I personally prescribed some pills to help him sleep. But it's still early. He doesn't need to go to sleep now. It's not his bedtime. So let me see him. The boy lunged forward to try and get inside. Immediately, he was repelled backwards by Nurse Rose. Her big hairy hand caught his face and threw it back like he was a ball. The boy stumbled on the gravel and landed on his bottom. The nurses had a good laugh at this. Jack scrambled to his feet. You can't get away with this. I demand to see my grandfather this instant. The well-being of my old folk is of paramount importance to all of us here at Twilight Towers, announced Miss Swine. The two little eyes glinted in the low winter sun, so we keep them on a strict timetable. And as you can see, the visiting hours is listed right there. She pointed to a sign on the wall with her baton. It read, Twilight Towers, opening hours, Sunday afternoon, 3 p.m. to 3:15. Latecomers not admitted. All other times we are strictly closed to all visitors. That's not even an hour, protested the boy. Boo-hoo-hoo, replied Miss Swine, before offering a sinister smile. Now, if you don't mind, I have my old folk to think of. I can't have a nasty, selfish little child ruin everything for them. Now, can I? Nurses? Yes, matron, they replied in unison. Please escort this young man off the premises. Yes, matron. With that, the two burly nurses stepped forward. Together, Nurse Rose and Nurse Blossom picked Jack up by his arms. Without breaking a sweat, they carried him down the gravel path towards the front gates. Jack tried to kick his legs, but the nurses were so big and strong that there was no way he could take them on. The matron watched as the boy was carried off. She smiled to herself and gave Jack a little wave as she called after him, Missing you already? Do come back and see us again. Chapter 32. Weeping Willow. Nurse Rose and Nurse Blossom dumped the boy right outside the gates, like he was a bag of rubbish. Jack's trike was tossed after him, and it landed with a clatter on the ground. Clank. Then the huge metal gates whirred shut. Clunk. From inside, the two nurses watched as the boy picked himself up, got on his trike and pedalled off down the road. By this time the sky was shot with red as the sun set. Night was about to fall. As Twilight Towers were set on the edge of the moors, street lamps were few and far between. Soon it was dark, real country dark. After pedalling for quite a while, Jack looked over his shoulder. Twilight Towers was now a long way off. And just as he could no longer see the nurses, they could no longer see him. Jack was a boy who was not going to take no for an answer when he came to seeing his grandfather. What's more, it was clear Miss Swine and her gang of nurses were not to be trusted. As he reached an area of woodland, he jumped off his trike before hiding it under a bush and covering it with branches, just as Grandpa had told him the RAF would hide Spitfires on the ground from enemy aircraft above. Slowly, Jack made his way on foot back to the old sinister folks' home. He avoided the road and instead made his way across the moors that led to Twilight Towers. With only the moon illuminating his path, finally Jack reached the perimeter wall. It was a great deal taller than he was, and barbed wire snaked its way across the top. Climbing it was going to be impossible, so Jack had to think fast. There was a weeping willow tree growing next to the wall, two of its branches just draping over the grounds of Twilight Towers. There was one problem. The willow tree was in full view of both observation towers. From the top of these huge searchlights swept up and down the grounds. This was going to be dangerous. Jack was frightened. He'd never ever dared to do anything like this before. Slowly but surely, Jack began to climb the willow tree. That it was winter and the branches were bare of leaves made it easier. After he had shimmied up the trunk, he edged his way along a branch, but disaster struck as he buckled under his weight and disturbed a flock of ravens that had been perched there. Squawk, squawk, squawk. The blackbirds made an awful racket as they took to the air in fright. The beam of the searchlights circled in the darkness before stopping on the tree. As fast as he could, Jack edged his body round to the far side of the trunk to avoid detection. He pressed himself up against it and stayed as still as a statue. The lights froze on the willow tree for some time before eventually moving off. But the nurses atop the observation towers would be suspicious now. One false move from the boy and he would be caught. Who knew what Miss Swine would do to him then? After counting to 10 in his head, Jack edged himself back around to the other side of the tree. On his hands and knees now, the boy crawled along the branch that hung over the vast ground of the nursing home. But not being used to climbing, Jack made a miscalculation. He had spent too long painting model planes in his bedroom, and he was not one for the great outdoors, so Jack crawled right to the end of the branch, thinking he would let his weight act as a lever. But the branch was not strong enough to hold him. And it snapped. Snap!